was praying to God, and I just kind of said, God, I just really want to know you more intimately. I want to go deeper and really, really get to know you. And that was the very first time I can say that I literally heard God speak. And it was just as clear as we're talking right now. And he said, if you want to know me better, I need to show you something first.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Everyday Miracles podcast. I'm Julie Hedenborg, your host. I have a very powerful episode for you today about the ability of Jesus Christ to step in and heal something that feels completely hopeless. And I know it's going to inspire, it's going to set someone free. So a couple things I need to be clear on from the beginning. Parental discretion is advised with this one. It's not for young ears, nothing explicit, but mature material for sure. Number two, a trigger warning if you are undergoing therapy for sexual abuse or satanic ritual abuse. And then number three, in this episode, my guest discusses a clinical trial of medication and therapy that he did for extreme post-traumatic stress disorder. I'm going to give you some context for this in a moment, but I just want to be clear. I'm not a physician. I am not prescribing or promoting in any way. I'm new to this therapy, but this is what he experienced, and he had actually an amazing result. I will post some links for you if you want to investigate it. Obviously, I would never, and I know my guests would agree with me, we would never try to seek out anything spiritual through taking a substance. You can open the door for the enemy. This was all a clinical thing that was a therapy. So I just want to make that clear. Some context for you about the background. Randy and Cynthia are my guests today. Randy was sexually abused starting at the age of 3 by his father. As he got older, he was groomed and he was trafficked. This took a very dark turn into satanic ritual abuse. It nearly took his life, and there were others that did lose their life. He had a complete breakdown at age 14. He was hospitalized. He underwent electroconvulsive shock therapy. And when he came out to go back to school at age 14, he was unable to recall the memories. He repressed this trauma for 33 years. He met Cynthia after he came out of this, and they have been married throughout. Their journey there's so much to it. Cynthia is amazing. I'm really happy that they're both here today to talk about what they've experienced. But just to be clear, the severity of the trauma that he has undergone cannot be overstated. I'm just so grateful that Randy's found healing, and he is so excited to share how Jesus has led him every single step of the way. In this episode, Randy and his wife share the miraculous journey to healing, the miracle that he's alive, the miracle that they're still married. And I think the biggest miracle in all of this is how Jesus was able to reconcile Randy's relationship with God the Father, our true Father, right? And I think it's absolutely amazing. So Ephesians 6:12 says that our enemy is spiritual. It is not flesh and blood. And I just want to read one more verse for you. In John 1:4-5, he's talking about Jesus here. In him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. So what a beautiful reminder. And Randy is no longer a victim. Rather, he has victory in Jesus Christ. So I hope if you're listening today and you're battling with post-traumatic stress disorder, or maybe you're in a relationship with someone who has these issues, I hope this brings you hope today that Jesus is still healing, and he is healing things that nobody could imagine. So I want to welcome my guests today, Randy and Cynthia Lail from Charleston, South Carolina. We will be referring to their book that is out. It's called Our Born Identity, Randy and Cynthia Lail. It was also written in collaboration with Rebecca Davis, who is a Christian trauma-informed author. This is a beautiful, beautiful book, the miracle story. So welcome, Randy and Cynthia.
Thank you very much. Be here. Yeah. So interestingly enough, I mean, most of my adult life, or majority of my adult life, I had no memory of the abuse that I had as a child. So I was living a life that was just very much in disarray, acting out, Sexual addiction was in full swing. It just grew and developed over the course of our marriage, and even beyond after having our children, it continued to grow. And it was very much an obsessive disorder on my part that I spent a considerable amount of time and energy investing into that addiction. There were other probably sub addictions that went on, but they didn't really amount to much. I probably drank a little too much, but some of that was part of my coping, which I didn't realize at the time, was just trying to numb out and not think about, or didn't want to feel. It wasn't as much about thinking about what I knew. I just didn't want to feel. My body was still reacting to the trauma. And also my mind was still reacting to the trauma, but none of us really understood what was driving that at the time. Mm-hmm. It was around 2001 or two. My oldest daughter, Whitney, had been in a eating disorder clinic. And she was struggling with an addiction herself, and she was 16 years old. I was there at that clinic, or we were there at that clinic on a family week, and so each of us, my wife and I think also my other daughter came along too. I think we all spoke to Whitney's counselors, and I think they were just interviewing the families and that type of thing. And I'll never forget, I was sitting in his office, and one of the first things in our conversation after we had our introductions was, we talked a little bit about Whitney, a little bit about her and my relationship. Then he looked at me straight in the eye and he said, "Mr. Lail, have you ever considered the fact that you might be sexually addicted or sex addict?" And I was stunned. I just literally felt my heart hit the floor. I wanted to slither out of there as quickly as I could and I didn't see that one coming. And that really sent me in a tailspin in my life at that point in time. And I got myself together. Like I said, pulled myself up my bootstraps and just worked to try to get through the week and be helpful to my daughter, supportive to her. And she was getting close to transitioning out and being able to come home. And she was doing really well, and we're very proud of her and the hard work she put into that. And just watching, even at that point in my life, I really didn't have a relationship with God, but I could see what God did in her life. It was very apparent. It was a faith-based clinic, and they really worked with her. And I just know going through addiction and going through recovery like this, it's hard work. And she put in the effort to do that, and she wanted to be healed, and I was very proud of her for that. So, on my side at that point in time, I was in a spiral, emotionally, and I just made my mind up that I was going to check out. And I did everything I needed to do. I dotted my I's and crossed my T's to make sure all my affairs were in order, and closed anything that was needed to be taken care of. I made sure Cynthia had power of attorneys, so she didn't have to worry about, trying to figure out where I was or what I was doing, or even if I was alive. And I just wanted it to be as easy as possible. And I just felt like I just had convinced myself that they were going to be better off without me. I just needed to go. Unfortunately, I felt like I needed something worse than death. That's what I deserved. And just taking my life was too easy. So I sought out a relationship online to meet up with a person who was in that BDSM lifestyle. And I wanted a full-time dominant submissive relationship. Me being the submissive, I just wanted that to be I felt like I deserved that for the rest of my life and have no freedom at all. I'll never forget driving to Daytona. It was such a dark, oppressive feeling that was all over me, surrounding me and everything. I think back on it, I couldn't recognize it at the time, but I was just so out of my head. Thinking back on it, I said, man, that didn't make any sense. How in the world do you let yourself do that? And but it was just the power of the darkness that I let into myself that was just so evil and so intent on taking me out that I came into agreement with it. I was just so lost. I just felt so alone. And I had a calling card that I thought I had enough to get an old, Bell South calling card. And you can tell how far back that was. And so I leaned over and rolled over on the bed and got the phone, picked the phone up. And I don't have any idea why I called my mother-in-law, but I called my mother-in-law. And I'm not going to say she didn't like me, but I wasn't her most favorite person at that time. And it was a very strained relationship with my in-laws. I mean, I love them to death now. And I reached out and called her, and she answered the phone. And it was early that next morning after I'd driven down there. And first thing I said, "Is there a God, Doris?" And it's just like a switch went off on her, and she went straight into witnessing to me and saying, she said, "Oh yes, there is a God." And she knew something was wrong, so she kind of got into talking to me, and I let out enough that she knew that I was not in Charleston, and that I told her I was down in Florida. And so, long story short, we went back and forth. That they staged an intervention that I avoided, and then the police wound up coming, and I surrendered to the police because I was planning on killing myself. I had a 12-inch Bowie knife that I had gotten from my brother-in-law for a Christmas present the year before, and that's all I had, and so that was what I was going to try to do it with, and I sat there many times holding that thing at my gut, and I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it, and so it was laying next to the bed. The police came in looking around. I think they were wondering if I had a gun or not. I mean, they saw the knife and they said, "Do you mind if we take this?" And I said, "No, you can have it." And then they helped me to the hospital, and so I got evaluated. So that was the second time I've been admitted to a psychiatric ward. Once when I was 14. I'll tell you about that later. But I get evaluated. They finally say I can go, but I have to have somebody come get me. So I'm 4 hours away from anybody I know. And so I picked up the phone and called Cynthia and told her where I was at. She said, "I'm coming to get you." And she got in the car and was down there.
That was a God thing. The girls were at a church retreat. They were skiing, so they were gone. But we met in the 9th grade at church. We were part of a youth group, and I just knew I knew there was a good man under there, and I knew there was something going on. So when he called, I mean, I immediately went. He quit his job and everything. I went and the next day called his boss, or went in to talk to his boss because I worked there too, and asked him to please give him a little bit of time. He's having some kind of breakdown, and they did. So, yeah. But yeah, so I drove down there and got him.
I come home and I realized I got to make a change. I owed it to Cynthia too to make that change. I mean, I went and got some help. I was seeing a psychologist at the time, was on a regular basis. Got involved in our church. We go to Seacoast Church here in Charleston, and that was another Holy Spirit intervention that I was introduced to people who just became mentors in my life right off the bat, right away. And they started speaking into my life and to us too. And I mean, it was a Wild at Heart men's group, the first men's group I'd ever been involved in. And I sat and listened. I sat like a lump on the wall for weeks, just listening and listening and listening. And one day something hit me and I just started talking. And I don't know how long I talked. It had to be 10 plus minutes. I mean, I was just spilling my guts to what I knew at the time. I was telling her about the suicide attempt. Except I kind of left some things out, but I gave them enough. I didn't go into all the detail. I wasn't that transparent yet. But it was just when I finished talking, I just kind of looked around the table and everybody was standing there with their eyes wide open, not saying a word. And I was sitting there going, "Oh my gosh, what did I just do?" And the guy lead the course said, "Wow, Randy, that's an incredible." And it just kind of, I really kind of got panicked for a second. I said, "Uh-oh, I shared way too much." But no, and that just kind of launched me. I mean, that was early 2000s, and it just turned my life around. I mean, it was just like I had a series of years of just peace, and I was on fire for God. Involved in different ministries, and we went to Kenya for about 6 months and worked in a mission there. I mean, we just prayed, but I could feel some things shifting in my spirit. I could feel some frustration. I could feel some things kind of coming back that were really alarming to me and underneath, and kind of frightened me. That peace was leaving. It was disturbing. And so in early 2009, I was in my living room praying, and this was the big turning point for what happened. I was praying to God, and I just kind of said, God, I just really want to know you more intimately. I want to go deeper and really get to know you. And that was the very first time I can say that I literally heard God speak. I'd gotten impressions in my spirit, and in confirmation in word and people speaking. That was kind of how I was hearing him before, but I'd never heard him speak before. And it was just as clear as we're talking right now. And he said, if you want to know me better, I need to show you something first. And I said, bring it. Well, that was a big mistake. I thought so at the time, because that was my first flashback.
Oh.
And I started seeing some things that nobody should ever see. And it was with my dad. And it horrified me. I mean, they were just like big, quick flashes. And I understand exactly why they call them flashbacks. They're literally a flashing image. But what comes with that is all the emotional trauma, pain, everything my body felt, everything I emotionally felt hit me all at the same time. And that didn't go away as fast as the flash did. Mm-hmm. I mean, that stayed. I mean, it wrecked me. It really wrecked me. I feel so bad for the pastor. I wore that poor man out. Going to see him, just needing prayer. I was so desperate. And I didn't have the personal relationship with Christ yet. I didn't have that. So I was turning to people. And I said, I need you to pray for me. And I'd come back, I need you to pray for me. And I kept coming back and coming back and coming back. And didn't seem to be any progress. I was just losing hope. And I just didn't want to feel it anymore. I didn't want to feel it. And finally, it reached a point many months later that I just finally just told God, I said, you know what? I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I know how I used to handle this kind of stuff, and I'm going to go back to what I know. And that's what I did. I made that choice. And I said, if you want me, you know where I live.
Wow.
And I didn't pray. I didn't say I never prayed, but I stopped getting in the Word. I stopped studying. I stopped praying regularly at night, or whenever I was doing morning times then. The only prayer he might have got is if I just said a prayer quickly before I went to bed. And I kind of got my career reestablished at that point, and I was working pretty hard through that. And so I stuffed it for about 2 years, and I was pretty successful at stuffing it for about 2 years. But I was back to the way I was, though. I was back online. I was back into the porn again. I was drinking a lot. I was drinking a lot of beer, and I put on a lot of weight in those 2 years. And I'd sit outside. I mean, I would have my alone time. Cynthia kind of learned to just leave me alone during those times and just give me a chance to decompress, come home, decompress from work. And it usually, unfortunately, it would take me a couple hours. And we were empty nesters by then, but it was hard. It was a really tough time in our life. And then that idea didn't hold up, didn't work real well. So it started bubbling up again. It's like a pressure cooker. It started bubbling up again, and I was back to wearing the pastors out again. I kind of started coming back to church. I found another one that I felt so sorry for, because I couldn't even tell him what I was trying to tell him what I was seeing and how it was making me feel. And I tried 2/3 of the time when we were together. And I could hear him over there praying in the spirit, just kind of praying over me, put his hand on me, that kind of thing, but that's just hard. I mean, when we launched the book, wrote him, and I sent him a pre-launch copy, and I wrote him and just thanked him for what he did for me. He's retired now, but just thanked him for what he did for me. But it's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I realized at that point I needed professional therapy, and so we started looking. I mean, I was scouring the websites, just looking for someone in Charleston. I wanted someone who was a trauma specialist, knew. I didn't know I had PTSD at the time, but I knew I had abuse.
And so we found somebody online, and she turned out, well, we found her through Darkness to Light.
Yeah, so I got on Darkness to Light down here, and they had a resource page, and it was references for in Charleston, different areas, but they had the doctors listed, and it was interestingly enough. I'll tell you, I did not want a male therapist.
Yeah,
I was not doing that. It had to be a female therapist. And there's probably a reason why that'll come out later, because my groomer was female. I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but it's the only thing that makes any sense to me. And so she was amazing, absolutely amazing. I'll never forget. I wrote her, I texted her or emailed her or something. I think I emailed her from my office during the middle of the day, and wrote her, and it's basically stilled my guts just a little bit. She called me in 5 minutes. My phone was ringing. And she said, after reading what you wrote me, I felt like I needed to call you right now. And so we made an appointment. I saw her 2 days later. I worked with her for
every week.
Well, not every week. It went weekly. Then it would space out. We would have some times where we'd take breaks, and it would come back in. Because it was kind of like the ebb and flows of the PTSD, where we would get through a certain amount of the memories, and it was kind of like my body needed to rest.
We thought we were through.
And so I would go for months and not really have any symptoms, and then or whatever. Then all of a sudden it would roll back in, and the next batch would start coming. And if this went on from 2012 probably to 13, somewhere in there, but it ran the early teens all the way to 17. And to the point that she was getting ready to retire, but we were doing EMDR therapy, and it reached a point to where it wasn't getting to the last of the memories. The last of the memories were typically the worst, and it was this really deep-seated trauma, and it wasn't working. Yeah. So during that time, I mean, it was really, I was really struggling, especially after therapy. When I would come home, I would sit on the front porch. I'd pour myself a glass of bourbon, probably a triple pour, and a cigar, and I would sit out, and I get the biggest cigar I could, so I could sit out there as long as I could and smoke an hour and a half and drinking, and just not say nothing. I didn't want to sit and talk. I had to think about it.
It was a tough time, because he did so much crying during that time. It was like, oh my goodness, the memories, and that would just keep coming back, and he would just keep struggling with it. And I would be like, you know what? He's going to be on his deathbed, and he's going to look back, and he's going to say, my dad took the first 13 years of my life, and then I gave him the rest of my life. I let him ruin my entire life. Why can he not just put it away? It happened. Put it in a box and forget about it. And so I went to him. I said, I need to go talk to your counselor. So he was like, what time do you want to go? We'll set it up right now. And so I went in there and I told her that. And she said, oh, honey, he can't. She said, those memories have to be processed, or they're like a little animal back there just scratching at him all the time. And short-term memories have to be processed into long-term memories, and they're not, because they're too traumatic. And so that made all the difference in the world, because then I understood that he could not just put it away, that we had to deal with this. And it changed our marriage. It changed our life.
Yeah, it was I was always in fear, and I wanted to share with her, but we just couldn't connect with what I was dealing with. And it bothered me. It didn't make me love her any less, but it bothered me.
The memories were too much for me. I couldn't hear the things that had happened.
But coming back coming back from the therapist, our whole marriage changed after that. Instead of it being almost, we were separate trying to deal with this, we came together as husband and wife and attacked it together. And that was a game changer.
It was.
Yeah.
The next day or a few days later, I was sitting at the table and I was reading the newspaper, and there was an article about this sofa fire in Charleston where the 9 firefighters died. And one of the survivors had gone through a clinical trial that had helped him with the PTSD. And I said, Randy, I wonder if this is something you could do. And he was like, no, I can't do that.
Well, she told me they were taking ecstasy, a drug that was like ecstasy. And I said, I'm not doing that. I said, that's ridiculous, Sam. I mean, I kind of scoffed at her and then went to work.
But I planted the seed.
Yeah. But later in the day, I could not stop thinking about it. So I picked up the phone and I called my therapist and I asked her about this. And she goes, oh, she says, I was actually thinking about recommending you to this, but they're in between trials right now. So, because she thought it would help me.
He was at a point where he could not face the memories.
Yeah.
This last batch of memories were so bad that she finally said, we can't go any further. Your fear level is just too high.
So she made a phone call in the session that I had and called the doctor, Michael Methofer, who was leading the team here in Charleston. And she was personal friends with him and his wife.
Such a God thing.
Yeah,
Personal friends. They were in Mount Pleasant. We didn't have to travel.
Right.
It was amazing.
So he said that they were still in between phase. I think there was phase 1 and phase 2 trial. They were in between those phases. So, but they were working on, they were getting ready to do an interim trial that was going to be a shorter trial that was with couples. And the way they explained it was, a couple with one dealing with PTSD and a significant other who has to live with them.
I say that second, the wife, their spouse has secondhand PTSD.
So,
because it's tough.
So they gave us the instructions of how to apply for the trial. It was all funded by an organization called MAPS. So we didn't have to pay for anything. We just had to give our time and participate. So, but there was a very rigorous approval process. We went through physical examinations and blood testing and blood tests, all this stuff, just because the main Dr. Methofer was really good at just kind of putting things in really layman's terms. And, so we'd understood it. He said, it's basically kind of insinuated we basically don't want anybody to die during the trial.
That will kill the trial.
We want to make sure your health is good and you're strong and that kind of thing. So because you're taking this kind of medication and with the it was pretty tough, but we got through it and we got approved. We thought at one point we were going to get pushed back, but we did get approved. And so we go through roughly about 4 or 5 months of cognitive therapy type thing where they're kind of checking us out and they're kind of starting the process, baselining everything with us and then we leading up to the trial, which was in August and September. The actual trial is an 8-hour day under the influence of the medication with a therapist, your clinical therapist there with you the whole time. Mm-hmm. Very controlled environment, very managed to where, it doesn't, you don't get out of control.
Yeah.
So, as we were getting into all that, we were asked if we would want to participate in a documentary as well. So they were going to track us before, during, and after the trial. And the whole time through that, I just felt like I still had a heart for, other people going through this, but, I didn't have the capacity to do anything about it at the time. But if we could do it, if this worked and we could be a part of bringing that story out, sure, we would do it. Early into seeing my therapist, the first few sessions, she told me she wanted to test me for PTSD. And I looked at her and said, well, that's for military and stuff, right? and she says, oh no, she said, any trauma is can cause PTSD. And I really literally I had no idea. I never associated it with anything else but what you hear with what we hear in the media. And it was always around, service members and maybe first responders and stuff like that. So anyway, so I went through. She said I was off the high end. I mean, so that that she just wanted to baseline that, to have something to go by as we progress through. And periodically, over the years, she would retest me just to see where I was at, and I didn't really move a lot. And I think, like I said once before, I think I would go up and down in depending on where the memories were and what was coming back and what phase of that I was in. Because once I experienced a memory and processed it, I would feel better for a little while, and then the next memory would come in. So yeah. So the morning of the trial, I mean, I was nervously optimistic about
very nervous
about being healed. I mean, I had over the years I'd had so much lost hope, so much dashed dreams of being healed. And I just got to the point to where, am I ever going to be healed? Am I ever going to know what it's like to be different? And I was even saying to myself, I said, I was concerned that if I do get healed, what am I going to be like? How's that going to change me? Is Cynthia still going to love me?
And through the documentary, because they interviewed me too, I had the same feelings. I know the damaged Randy loves me, but will the healed Randy love me? So it was kind of a ironic thing that we were both worried about the same thing, but needless to say.
So the morning of the trial, we're back to the documentary. They film us getting in the car.
They're in the car.
They have a drone up in the air watching us drive off. I mean, it's all this kind of stuff going on. It's pretty cool, actually, just seeing how it's all done. And so we get over there, and while we're driving, there's a sound guy hidden in behind the seat behind us, listening to us talk. So anyway, it's pretty kind of it was very distracting, but it was cool. I get over there, and we all get out of the car. We walk in, kind of getting settled, meeting all the people there. There's a whole team of people there. Film crew. They're filming because they're actually filming the documentary separate from filming the session separate from the documentary. So they got all that stuff going on. As they give us a quick tour, walk us around, kind of show us where we're going to be sitting. And I think it was chilly inside there or something. Yeah. And maybe you were cold and needed to cuss what it was. You wanted a coat. So I go back out to the car. The car's parked out there by the road. And the whole way out there, I said, I could get in this thing and go. And I literally stood there for a few minutes trying to think through, okay, what's going to happen if I do this? How much trouble am I going to be in? Or do I care? And I had that flight feeling hit me. Just go, just run, get the heck out of here, just run. And I fought myself because nobody was out there with me. Nobody was there to stop me. I could have just got in the car and gone. And, there again, it's just like that strength God gave me. He gave me the strength all the way through the sessions, when I was going through therapy and everything, to go. I just dragged myself there.
I would we worked together. I would go and say, it's time to go to your session. And I almost felt like he was going to reach over and throw up in his trash can. He was just so stressed.
Yeah.
I don't know how he did it.
So I had that same feeling standing there in the parking lot. So, and I just said, you got to go inside. So I just grabbed the coat, closed the door, and walked back in. And I think I told him when I got there, I said, I almost got in the car.
I bet now they take your keys.
Oh, wow. Do you think there was a part of you that felt like, what if it doesn't work, or what am I going to see?
That was the fear. He was so afraid if it didn't work.
Yeah. So, run away, and that way you're not disappointed or let down again, or, whatever. And I think a lot of people who deal with the PTSD, they just had a fright feeling, and all the time. It was constant. I mean, it was actually, that's why I was saying before, what am I going to be like? Because I know what this feels like, and it's familiar, and I can do it. I actually had the realization. I told the therapist at the trial, I said, I don't know what it feels like to be healed. I'm not sure. I've never not felt this, never not dealt with this my whole life. And it's just tough. I mean,
I think the devil was also working hard. He would have been more than happy if Randy jumped in that car.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure he would have.
Yeah. Well, and there was something I felt was pivotal, is that you prayed. There was a special prayer that was, I feel like, pivotal. And I know you were on medication, but I believe, like you, that Jesus can meet us where we are. And there are pieces of some things that you saw when this happened that you might not have chosen to see, as far as like you wouldn't have planned. So I feel, and God's obviously led you through this when you were not on medication. So if you could share that pivotal prayer.
Yeah, I just asked, I just asked God, I said, I want you to come into this with us, be a part of it, meet us here. I can't do this by myself. I can't do this. I need you. And at that point, my relationship with him was, when I would pray and when I would talk with him, I would have a peace. So my prayer time was becoming more meaningful to me as we approached the trial. It was, and I know he was giving me that comfort feeling and supporting me, and so I knew that. And I said, I'm going in to do this. And part of it was, all my life I've always done things in my own strength, never bring him. And this time I wanted to heal. I knew he was the way to heal. And I didn't know exactly what I was supposed to do, but I knew he did. And so I just said, be there with me. And I don't know if I had an expectation at that point in time what that would look like. I just wanted him there. And we finally settled down. If you can kind of draw a picture, if I can kind of describe the picture, we're sitting in this really, really nice room. It's plenty of windows, you see the sun shining outside. And there's these two giant comfy lazy boy chairs, one for me and one for Cynthia. And we're sitting down in there when they're sitting in front of us talking to us, and we got headphones to put on, night shades, what you'd like a blindfold you put on, similar to that, to sleep with. And he says, now we're ready to give you the MDMA. And he shows us two pills. The first thing that pops in my mind is the scene from The Matrix where Morpheus gets Leo to, well, you want the red pill or the blue pill? And the two pills were two different dosages. So one was like, I think, a 75 milligram, and the other was 100 milligrams. So he said, we give you a choice which one you can take. One's a little milder than the other one, obviously. And I said, I want the 100. I said, we're going to do it. We're going to do it right. So anyway, so he explains to us the medication. He says, basically says the MDMA lowers the fear level in the patient and raises their confidence level. So he said it's perfect to allow you to process the memory, because what's blocking it is the fear. And he said oddly enough, MDMA was created for psychological therapies in the 70s. And it got out in the club scene by accident, not accident, but it was just kind of misused, hijacked, whatever you want to call it. And that's how it got canceled. And when it got when they were trying to cancel it, they tried to keep them from canceling it in therapy. And they canceled it everywhere, so they had to take it out of therapy because they said it's very promising. They thought it was a good companion to kind of help people work through the traumas. So. But yeah, so we take the pill about, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes later, you start feeling it. And so he said, we put our headphones on, it's like an elevator music, and then we put the blindfolds on, we just kind of laid back. And he said, just clear your head of all your thoughts, just try to clear your head and just just relax. He said, your brain knows how to heal itself. You just got to get out of its way. So, so that's what we did. So that's what I tried to do. So I just laid back. I cleared my head, and then immediately it's just like I was sitting on the floor of my childhood bedroom when I was 3 years old, looking at myself in the crib, and Jesus is sitting to my left. So I'm just kind of stunned. I'm just looking around. I mean, the detail of the room. I mean, I can draw the room exactly. I actually described it to my brother who passed after back in 2015, and he goes, "Yeah, that's pretty much what the room looked like." You know, so where the bed sit, where the closet doors were, where the bathroom was, you know, the hardwood floors, that all that. And so we're just sitting there, and I'm seeing myself. I'm in the crib. My middle brother is in the lower bunk, and I crawl out and fall out of the crib and hit the floor. And I'm watching all this transpire. Phil gets out of the bed, runs over to me. My parents come in the room looking down at me, and I didn't understand, why was he showing me this? And this wasn't, you know, this wasn't an abuse, but what it was the beginning, what set it off. So me falling out of the bed meant that it was time for me to come out of the crib and go into a bed. So Phil was moved into my brother's room with Wayne. We had a Jack and Jill bathroom, so he was on the other side of the thing. And then I was put in the bed in a room by myself. And shortly after that is when the abuse started.
Wow.
Yeah. So I go through the whole, all the 11 years of abuse. I go through all of that in this session, an 8-hour day, going in and out of, you know, laying back, you know, I would just sit up and just needed a break for a minute. But the whole time Jesus was with me wherever we were in the memories as we progressed through them, sitting with me, encouraging me. He would put his arm around me, or he would hold my hand. He would say, "I'm here, you can do this." And at one time I couldn't do it, and I said, I said, "Stop." And it just stopped. My head cleared. I sat up, and
he spent the whole day, he would be curled in a fetal position, or his whole body would be shaking. It was just, I mean, it was so,
yeah.
His body was just reacting to the memories and the feelings. And one time I was like, I'm going to go hug him. And the doctor was like, no. He said, he was like, you know, we're mouthing it, but he's like, no. And he went over and just put his hand on him just to calm him down because he was shaking so hard. But I mean, it was amazing. And then he would sit up and he would take a breath and have some water. And then he'd say, "Okay, I'm ready," and explain everything that he had seen. And then he'd say, "Okay, I'm ready." And we'd lay back down, and he'd go back through it.
Yeah. What I had learned through all my therapy, and it was evident what Cynthia was just describing, was you along with PTSD, you have all the abuse memories, but your body has memories. It's called body memory. And so all the things that I was going through was my body releasing it and getting rid of it. And
it's crazy.
So but I don't really necessarily remember any of that, because I'm in this vision, but my body's kind of doing things I'm not 100% sure. I mean, I remember I remember people putting their hand on my back or on my arm or something like that. I remember being touched. But until I saw some of the videos later of the sessions, I really actually didn't recall being in those positions. You know, I had some vague awareness of it, but not like what I heard described.
Because it was a couples therapy, I took the MDMA also. And so I just laid back and said, "Okay, God, if you need to show me something, show me something. Otherwise, I'm going to just sit here and pray for him and just ask you to be with them, and it was an amazing time with Jesus.
Yeah.
But I spent the first session watching him most of the time because he was just going through so much. So
Yeah.
I was just laying over there praying as hard as I could pray, but God had it. Jesus was right there walking him through it before I even started praying that. So
it was a really, I mean, looking back on it, it was the first session was really difficult. A lot of memories, I was processing all of the trauma. And, you know, I didn't see everything in a linear, I mean, it was in order, but it was significant events through those years. It wasn't like everything that happened. It was probably more focused on the trauma. So, but it's very interesting. I mean, I was seeing a lot of it, you know, in third person. So it was like disassociation. Probably 3/4 of the vision was like that. The other was in it.
Mm-hmm.
And the trauma levels were they were manageable, but they weren't I wasn't scared.
Yeah.
So I could really see how the MDMA really manage that, and what's so cool about the way they're doing it, when it's in a purposed structured environment, it's used in the right way, it's good.
Yes.
Just when people take stuff and use it in the wrong ways is what gives it the bad reputation. So yeah, so I mean, I remember sitting up that evening, we were basically said we think we started at around 8 or 9 o'clock, and
it was 8 hours. It was a good 8
We
hours.
finished at 5. And we had a breaks in there. There were some breaks. They would bring us snacks to eat, stuff like that, get something to drink, go to the bathroom kind of thing. But I would say better than 3/4 of it was all session.
Wow.
So, yeah.
And this is, and also, I just want to say for people listening, this is not like the medication is just an instant cure. This is in partnership. It's pharmaceutical grade. I don't recommend that anyone to try this on their own.
No,
but
it's awesome.
Yes. It's with the right therapy and guidance.
Yes.
And this stuff kind of continues to unravel some after, and we'll go into that. But it's really interesting to me, to be able to, and it sounds like the amygdala part of your brain, that's like part of the fight or flight. Like they can actually turn that down so that you can kind of see things, like you said, from an observer perspective, where it's not overwhelming. And that is my understanding. It allows you to process it and then move past it. So I want to get into some of the stuff Jesus showed you, if you don't mind. I know there was a part where you saw something with your grandmother. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, not all the visions or all the manifestations that I saw during the session was trauma based. Some of it was in the spirit with him, with Christ, and really taking out of any reality. So it was basically in a place that it was almost like a cloud was surrounding us. It's all grayed out, so I'd had no perspective. I mean, I know I was in heaven, unless it was some other intermediate place that he's created to meet me. But it was just me and him. And he said, "I have someone I want you to meet." And I hear this voice. And I knew right away who it was. And she walks through the cloud. It's kind of, it's just kind of like she just appears and comes up to me. And I just hug her. I mean, it felt, Mama had a particular smell, it's hard to describe, very, very sweet smell. And yeah, she put her arms around me and hugged me, just like she always did. But what was so striking was that she didn't appear like I remembered her. She was in her prime. And she had an aura around her that just glowed. And the feeling that I got in that place was just pure joy, and it just emanated from her, from Jesus, peace. And she looked at me and said that she was sorry that she wasn't there the way she had told me she was going to be, but that because she had I have a memory of her telling me that I told her she was the first one I told what was going on with me from the mind of a 4-year-old. But she said she was going to look out for me. She was going to take care of this and keep me safe. And she left after that visit and passed away not long after that. So seeing her there, she was just reassuring me that it didn't stop there, that she had prayed for me. And the only way I can describe it is she unleashed the Holy Spirit to look out after me. And it was just, it was just such a beautiful experience. And that she told me how proud she was of me. And even at that point in time, I struggled with hearing that. I mean, I had a hard time hearing people say, you're brave, you're proud of you. It just didn't resonate because I didn't believe it. But I was gracious and accepted it with her. And she was held my shoulders and looked me straight in the eye and said, I just want you to know. And she looked over at Jesus and said, this guy's got you. You don't have anything to worry about. And she told me how she loved me, and she was gone, and she left. And it blew my mind. It really did. It blew my mind. I mean, it was just such a beautiful way to remember her, because most of my life before getting the treatments and everything, I didn't have a lot of memory of her. And I think I should have. Being at 4 years old, I should have remembered more. And I just always wondered why my memories were during those years were so sparse, so spread out, and just always, I guess I just assumed everybody had bad memories. But I've gotten so much more back about her, since the treatment. It just like it opened up my mind to just things just started pouring in, and almost like it was almost like a fire hose, especially after the first session. We had a 3-week break before the second session, and that was 3 weeks from hell, because it was the memories were coming in so fast, the emotions and the what's the right word I'm trying to use? I would just go through panic attacks, and then the emotional swings, and I was really, really struggling. And they warned us that you're going to go through some things because you process so much that you're going to unlock things that probably were inadvertently locked away. I mean, it wasn't just trauma memories I was getting back. I was getting back just normal everyday memories of stuff. I said, I'd forgotten about that. It was kind of like when I got it, it's like I'd forgotten about that, but it was like it was there. I knew it was a memory. It's a the difference between a memory and a fantasy, or a memory or making something up. I mean, so it was pretty interesting, and so I was feeling really good moving into the second session, really optimistic, hopeful. My demeanor and all was different. My countenance was all different. I mean, I could even feel it. I was getting a little expectant about, man, this session is going to be something else. I mean, I can't wait to meet God in it. And I was just real excited about that. So kind of had some false expectations in there that, set myself up. So when we start the second session, I lay back and nothing's happening. I mean, I'm just sitting there, nothing's happening. I'm sitting there going, I finally just remembered from the last time, Dr. Medhofer said, just clear your head. So that's what I did. I cleared my head, tried to clear out any expectations I thought I may or may not have had. I'm right back in that room again where the first one started. And seeing more, just kind of going through and running through it again. I'm not gonna say it was a different perspective. It was much faster paced this time. I would say we got all the way till I was 14, but there was some more perspective to it. And in terms of, you know, God kind of talking to me about answering whys and helping me understand. So I was kind of getting some mental clarity on some of that stuff. And one particular one, after I'd gone through the, you know, going through the memories or the trauma, the whole afternoon was spent with him, and showing me things like who he was in memories that I had of when my grandmother passed and was at the funeral. I stood up on the side of the coffin and tried to shake her, wake her up. And I touched her. You know, I was shocked at how cold she was. And Mom came and got me down. So I drug a chair over there. I mean, I probably made a spectacle out of myself. But she sat me in a corner. She said, "You need to stay here." And not the corner, but it's over to the side. And a man sat down next to me and told me that he knew my grandmother, and he told me that I didn't need to worry about anything, that I was going to be okay. And it was just real, you know, encouraging, and just, you know, said, I know your family. I know everything about your family, kind of things like that. You know, it was just, you know, I'm still 4 years old, you know, so it means something, but not like it would mean to us today. So anyway, and then I've had other experiences where someone would come sit next to me. There was this, a lot of times after breakfast, before I was in school, this is, you know, before kindergarten and all that, I would run out in the backyard by the pool and just kind of lay down in the grass, just be by myself. I was kind of a loner as a kid. I didn't really play with a lot of friends and stuff like that. And a man would come sit next to me, and happened multiple times, and just sit with me and talk with me, encourage me, or someday maybe not even just doing it, just sit with me. And one time I remember running it back into the house. Mom called me to come in, and I ran back into the house, and she, as I was passing her, she asked me, "Who was that out in the yard? Who was that person?" I said it wasn't anybody. I just kind of blew it off. But he helped me to remember this little nuggets, just to know that he was there. So I got that in those sessions, in that session. And then I had it was back at that same place where I saw my grandmother, the same setting. He said again, "I got somebody I want you to, some people or somebody I want you to meet." And I saw my mom.
And your brother.
Yeah, I know. And my brother. And they were just both, I mean, Mom especially. My brother, my brother died in his 60s, but they were both in their prime. Same way with Mama. Yeah, my brother was just kind of joking around with me like he always did. You know, he used to always call me little brother. It irritated me. And but Mom just hugged on me, and she told me she was so sorry, but she also said, "I'm very proud of you. You've been very brave." And she did the same thing Mama did. Looked over at Jesus and said, "This guy's got you. You don't have anything to worry about. This guy's got you." And Wayne was just, you know, putting his arm around me like he always did when we, you know, the way I remember him. But then after that, I see my dad, and I'm pissed.
Yeah.
It's just the lack of a better way to put it. I'm sitting there going, "You have got to be kidding me!" And he stayed in the back just enough for me to see him, but he didn't approach me. He did speak to me, and he said, "Hey, son," and but I didn't speak to him at all. And after the initial shock of it, I just ignored him after that. And Mama came back in, so it was kind of like a family reunion.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a really, really, really cool experience.
Yeah.
And I think I think God was showing me there redemption, forgiveness. I have to assume Dad made his peace. He came late, but he made his peace.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually I got okay with that, and was able to finally forgive him. I mean, I would forgive him and forgive him and forgive him. It's like, but I'd put it at the cross and I'd come back around to the side and pick it back up.
Mm-hmm.
It's just hard. It's because with all the memories, new memories coming, it would start all over again. I'd have to forgive him again. And it just, I said, how many times? And then, we were talking about this recently in a small group, and one of the guys said 70 times 7. Believe me, it's a lot. So,
Yep.
So at the end of that particular vision with my family, Jesus said, "I got somewhere I want to take you." So we start walking, and as soon as we start walking, something catches my eye, and I look up, and I see all these just brilliant streaks of light streaming through the sky. It was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. I mean, way beyond any fireworks show you'll ever look at. I mean, it was just everywhere, and colors I've never seen before. It was just really something else. I was just awestruck. I was just walking along, looking up, so I was glad he was looking out for where I was going. And also I noticed as I'm walking along, looking up, it starts cutting off. It's like something just like like a shadow, we're just cutting it off. And then it all disappeared. And I realized we entered into another place, and I just could feel the room just vibrated. It was it's just like you could just feel whatever the power is emanating all around you. And I heard this voice, and it said, "Who is this?" And I kind of looked around, and I didn't know what to say. I said, but I could feel the vibration. Became the voice. It was like you could feel it. I could feel it inside me and around me, and it was almost like, I wasn't necessarily just hearing it from my ears. You were hearing it from every part of your fiber of your being. It was crazy. And I had a sense at that point. I said, that's got to be the voice of God. And Jesus spoke up. I looked at him, and Jesus spoke up and said, "This is my friend, and I vouch for him." And it was just really, really beautiful experience. I mean, God said that, told me that no more will you be apart. And it was just it wasn't like it was a whole lot of words, but it was like I was being accepted. I couldn't approach him on my own. I could only approach him with Christ. Mm-hmm. And I didn't fully understand. I'm still not sure I still fully understand that particular vision, but over the years, and I reflect on it, it's really, I think it's really more about that he needed to show me that who my father is. And I'm just now even, I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but I'm just now really accepting that he's my father. And being good with that, and being and feeling like I've got a father who loves me. And because if it's a struggle for a long time, I was okay with the Holy Spirit, I was okay with Jesus, but I was not okay with God. And because he represented that father, but what was so beautiful about all of it is they got it and they understood it and they knew where I was at, and still worked on me, still brought me along. And it's just an amazing love that's beyond anything we can imagine here. So after that vision, I kind of I don't remember if I came out or if I continued on, but there was one more just before we finished the second session. It wasn't like I was standing there with him. It was just a voice I was hearing. And it was, I'm proud of you. I'm so proud of how strong you are and how you've pushed through this, that you brought me into it. And all this it was very kind of a summing up kind of conversation. But he says, there's one thing we need to close up that's been left opened. And that was where I had begged God for years. I just couldn't do this anymore. I can't do this. Is after I committed suicide. I just can't do this anymore. The pain is too much. I said, if it's okay with you, will you just bring me home? And he said, you have a choice. He said, you can come home now, or you can stay. And I went, oh, it was just like my life was flashing through my head at that point. I started thinking about my kids, my grandkids, Cynthia. I thought about the trial. I said, oh God, this would be devastating to the trial if I just leave here.
Yeah, I was going to say somebody must have been praying there too.
That would probably ruin the trial. I just had this peace in my spirit all of a sudden. I just said, no. I said, I don't think I'm finished. I said, I think there's still stuff I got to do. And I wanted to do that and make a difference. So I said, I'll stay. And, but that was just I think that was really kind of cool that that door needed to be closed. Needed to bring that around and actually just recognize that, because, we all kind of walk around, oh gosh, this world's so crazy. I want to be glad when God takes us home. You hear people say that all the time, but that was something that I didn't think too much about it right at that point in time, but as the years went by and I reflected back on it, that he knew exactly what I needed to hear, and I needed to engage in that and close that down. So that was the end of it. Yeah, boy, coming out of the trial, though, we had so many expectations of, oh man, we're done with this. I was done with the PTSD. We tested the following week, and my PTSD level was nearly non-existent.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, we were pretty amazed by that. Now I was still unpacking mentally all the stuff, the memories and everything. But what I thought was really interesting after the second session was, instead of having all these memories and not really knowing how they fit, now I could remember stuff. I go, wait a minute, that goes here. This didn't happen here. This happened here. So I was getting it back in order, putting it to a timeline, and even when I started journaling a couple of years later, I started writing all this down. I was fixing it while I was writing. So, wait a minute, that didn't happen here. This happened here. And, it was just, all that, the therapist was telling me he had another patient that described that he was reorganizing his file cabinet. just getting everything, in place where it's supposed to go, like we would normally have it. So your brain's up there just doing all this, and automatically. Yeah. And, at some level, you're conscious enough to kind of know what's moving around.
So, Randy, I'm curious, you had some kind of memory of your grandmother at this time and making known to your family what was happening. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So my grandmother would come up and visit periodically and stay for a week or two at a time. So, and we just loved it when she came up. I mean, I did, especially because, I got a lot of one-on-one time with her. She would spend time with me, and she stayed in one of the room on the next to us, where in my brother's room. And, so I was just sitting on the bed talking to her. She always used to have these cherry cough drops, and I loved them because they really taste like cherries. But it was medicine, so she wouldn't give too many of them to me. But we were sitting on the bed talking, and I was just telling her what I did. And she said, "What do you like to do with your dad?" I said, "Oh, we washed the car and that kind of stuff." And she said, "Well, do you have anything really special that you do with your dad?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "We have a special time." And so we're both like I said, we're both sitting on the bed, and I said, "Well, what are you doing?" She said, "What do you do in your special time?" I said, "Well, he touches me here," and I showed her we're in my private area, and she just stopped. It was almost like she went pale, and she closed her eyes and then opened her eyes again, looked at me, and said, "Does this happen often?" And I was starting to get a little kind of concerned. I could tell something was wrong. And she said, she said, "Does this happen very often?" I nodded my head, yeah. And she said, "How long has this been going on?" And I said, "I'm not real sure," or something like that. So anyway, she just grabbed me and hugged me. And I just love the way she'd hug me. It was just so comforting and just so peaceful. And she laid down on the bed with me and just hugged me and started singing to me like a lullaby. And somehow she wasn't really singing the words of the song. She was kind of praying to the tune of the song. It was the way I remember it. And it's, so I fell asleep, and I woke up a little bit later, and I could hear Mom and her talking loudly in my mom's bedroom. So I got up and started walking down the hallway, and I could smell the cookies were cooking in the oven. So I could smell the cookies. And so I just ran on by the room and went to the kitchen. And but they were arguing. And I heard Mom tell her, I don't want you to ever talk to me about this again. And so after the
funeral, Mom was in a room. She was folding clothes, and she was crying. And I walked in the room, and she just sat down on the bed, and she just said how much she misses her mom, and she says, "I just really miss my mom." And I told her what I had told Mama, and what Mama said she was. I told her what Mama said she was going to help me. I said, "Mama said she was going to help me," and Mom just got real quiet, and I started to tell her what I had told Mama, and she looked at me and her face just kind of turned stern, and she said, "I don't want you to ever talk about this again." And I didn't. Never told anybody else. And so, yeah, kind of that was a tough one to kind of face and unpack and kind of deal with now. And I guess back then, a lot of that stuff just was swept under the rug in those years. Nobody talked much about it. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it was just not like today. It's a little more out in the open, but still,
Your experience, having the whole Jesus experience, and granted, you invited him into it. I'm just curious, Cynthia, did you experience anything like that? What's the typical experience that people have under this medication?
It was an amazing peace, just so peaceful, and just laying there. And I just laid there and I don't know. I don't remember that I remember I just told him, show me if there's something I need to see. If there's something that's happened that I need to see, or anything you need to show me, just show me. Otherwise, I'm just going to lay here and just be with Jesus and pray for Randy and listen to him, be there for him and just pray for him the whole time. But it was amazing. The peace was amazing. But yeah, so I felt God, I felt Jesus there, but I don't remember talking to him because I was so concerned with him, what all was going on with him, that I was focusing on that. But it was an amazing peace. That, at one point near the end, I finally said, I got to have worship music. You're going to have to give me some worship music. I can't do this. I called it yoga music anymore. And they turned it on, and What a Beautiful Name is the first song that came on. It was like, oh my gosh. And so that was just the perfect song just to lay. So I just laid there with my hands up, just praising him, because that was the end of it, but yeah, it was amazing. I was more supporting him, but I feel like I still got something.
Yeah.
I got some real time with Jesus out of it. So.
And did you feel a difference in any emotional healing from what you went through in all of this? Could you see a difference in that?
I did feel better. I think it did. I do. I don't have specifics like he does, but I know that I feel like I was different after that, after all that, because you're right. I needed healing too. There were some rough years. So
yeah, I think God even worked in that the trial that they needed. It was a couples trial. I think that was not an accident.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah. At first we were like, well, I don't know. I was like, go for it. I would have done anything at that point. I was like, if they need me to be in it for you to get it, I'll be in it. I don't mind, I'm more than willing to do whatever it takes to get him, because that was, like I said, our last hope. The therapist was like, I can't go any further. He can't go any further. And so we had to have something to get over that hill, and it was like, that was our only hope. So of course I would have done anything at that point.
Yeah.
Whatever they needed me to do. So yeah, but it was an amazing thing. But like Randy said, God met him where God can heal somebody anywhere, but that worked for Randy. Some people can be prayed over and be healed. And but that's what he needed, and that worked. So we're just so thankful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that physical healing needed to happen, because that PTSD was a physical issue, physical problem, and needed to heal physically before I could heal spiritually. And so yeah, the following years behind the PTSD, behind the clinical trial, I spent journaling. I mean, I wrote a 60, 70 type page memoirs of all my memories, all the vivid detail of everything that happened to me the way I remembered it. And I just felt like I needed to do that for therapy more than anything, just to help with it. But it also tied back to the book, because 10 years ago from today, God had spoke to me and said, you're going to write a book about your experience. And he gave me the name of the book, Albarn Identity. And I never forgot it. And yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And so, but the book sounded great and it was neat to tell people, but it just seemed like a pipe dream for so many years. I don't even like to read, much less write a book. And I don't have the patience for it. So I would read through, reading through my memoirs was like re-triggering myself. I mean, it was just writing it was hard enough. And so we finally we were up in Nashville for 2 years for work. I was, and Cynthia was back and forth, and I just really poured into finishing it at that point and just get everything down. I felt like I got everything done. Okay, I said, now what? What am I supposed to do with it? It wasn't in any form that you could turn into a book at that point in time. So we found Rebecca, wonderful, wonderful lady, and we just love her to death. And she we worked a deal together to help us write the book, and we spent this whole past year going through that journey. And it was pretty incredible. Yeah, I think once we started realizing it was actually coming together, wow, it was
Yeah.
I said, this is really happening.
Yeah. Well, I
Hang
know
on.
Jesus, you said at one point God told you he wanted you to share your story to help
Yeah.
others. Yeah. And I guess that's
Yeah.
part of the whole book message, obviously.
Mhm.
But I have a couple questions, and one I have to ask Cynthia. She's been so patient, and I'm really blown away that, you know, neither one of you guys really had any idea the level of trauma. And I know we haven't gone into a lot of detail, but it got very dark at one point. And, you know, here you are, you saw you saw that man you loved through all of this. And, you know, I'm thankful that you shared that part about, you know, your pivotal moment where you realized, you know, he can't help it. I think, you know, what do you say to someone out there listening who has a loved one who's going through this? You know, obviously you guys had a great outcome with the therapy, but just in general, you know, kind of when these memories start popping up, what would you say to that person right now who's at that early phase of this?
I think they just got to remember that this is just something they're going through. When we got married, we had no idea, neither one of us. God's given me a vision of our marriage was a pretty little house on a hill, but we didn't realize that was a volcano our house was on. And before long, that darn volcano. But he also told me that our house was built with God glue, and that's what kept us together through it all. So, but I would just say they've got to get through it. One of the things is, don't put it off, you know, get help. Just the memories, they're not going away. And until you face them and deal with them, then, you know, you're not going to get better. And you just got to be there and love on them and just don't give up. You know, to get to this point that we're at now is amazing, but it was a lot of hard years. It was a lot of really hard years, but yeah, God just kept us together. I just kept going to church and just kept praying. And a lot of times I would just, okay, Holy Spirit, you've got to deal with him. If I say it, it's going to make him mad. But if you do it, and God would, you know, take care of it. All of a sudden he would come back and apologize or whatever. But yeah, you can't give up on them. You just got to keep trying and just love them through it. And just, you know, God will bring them out the other side, and it'll be amazing. It will be. And then they have a story to tell. So,
yeah. Well, and I love how he's laid it on your hearts that you want to help people, you know, that are going through this and they don't see any hope, you know. And it's amazing to me how quickly with this, praise God, you know, the way he walked you through this, it's really beautiful. And then coming out of it, were there still like months after this therapy? How long has it been? And how long did you kind of feel like you were healed? I mean, I know you took the test right after, but is it really that fast?
Well, I mean, the physical aspects of the PTSD were gone, so I wasn't dealing with the flashbacks and the trauma from the flashbacks. I mean, which was really keeping you stuck.
Yeah. But
from the spiritual healing side, I mean, that was 2017 when we went through that. So I would say, in terms of my physical health at that point in time, I mean, I was exhausted all the time. I needed to rest. You know, what was good about it was the nightmares had all but disappeared. I still had a few; they still crept in there. But I would say from my physical health, it was a number of years before I really felt like I got my physical health back. I mean, it really affected me. Just the tiredness and the exhaustion all the time. I mean, even after the PTSD was gone, I still had those feelings. I hadn't done a lot to spiritually grow, and so that just begun during those years. You know, those after years. So you know, it was just 2023 now, so it's been 6 years, 5-6 years.
Yeah.
From going from that to where I'm at now. I mean, so I'm not going to say I didn't get in some of the way. You know, I think I got I think finally once I was able to kind of go and let my guard down I just kind of slumped and just sat and didn't really do much to engage. I just didn't want to, I was just tired, you know?
Yeah. And how is your relationship with Jesus today?
He's my best friend. I just, you know, yeah. It's, you build a friendship over time and relationship, people that are there for you. And it was important that he showed me that. He showed me that he had been there for me. And now that I know him the way I know him now, I mean, I get up in the morning now. He's moved my quiet time from night to morning. I get up in the morning now. I mean, I'm up
5 o'clock.
4:30, 5 o'clock, and to sit and just brew a pot of coffee and sit down and have quiet time and just talk and share together, and it's just spending time with him. I just love it, and I don't know. I mean, it's been a long time coming, and I'm just so glad I'm at where we are now, and and then through him and through that relationship, he's healed my heart with God. It's helped me to be able to get to the point to where I can really see God now as my Father.
Praise God.
Yeah.
Praise God. And I want to know, you've been through more than I can possibly imagine. And I'm so grateful for your healing, and to hear this beautiful miracle is phenomenal. But as you look back and you think about those early years where those memories were starting to surface and things were the volcano was starting to rumble, like there are people listening right now that are in that spot. So I want to hear from Randy. What do you have to say to that person who feels afraid to even get help, or they know something's wrong under the surface? What would you say to that person?
Well, it took a lot for me to get to the point to admit that I needed help. I desperately wanted to be healed, and I would think everyone out there who's going through the same thing wants to be healed, wants to find peace. I mean, you wouldn't desire what you're going through. That doesn't make any sense. And but like me, I tried everything in the world first before I finally tried the right way. And too often we do that. So controlling ourselves, handling ourselves. So just to know that there is a Father out there that loves you more than you'll ever know and understand. You don't have to understand it. You don't have to be right. You don't have to have your hair part in the right place and you're in the right clothes on. You don't have to appear to be anything. He'll pick you up out of the mud and help you up. So I would just encourage people just to never give up. The key was just never give up. Just simply ask God, I can't do this, and if you're really there, will you? And that was kind of where I was at. I mean, that's pretty much what I prayed, and he can work with that, and he did. But it's tough to go on when you're in a recovery journey and you're walking through all the stuff you got to walk through. It stinks. It's hard. It's tough. But it's necessary. You got to go through it before you get to the other side. And so I can't tell you how many times I just prayed and begged God to just take this off me, take this thorn away from me. And I'm fine with not feeling it anymore. And that's how it worked for me. So, but I think the biggest thing I think that I prayed, I asked God for help and I asked him to give me the strength to get through it, and he did. I had a choice. Sure, I could have walked away. I had plenty of choices, plenty of pivotal moments where I could have walked away, but he gave me just enough strength to say, okay, I can do this. I can do one more day. And that was how I took it. I took it one day at a time. Yeah. I'd wake up in the morning and think, God, just give me enough strength to get through today. Just get me through today.
And it needs to be looked at it like that. Don't, just face the traumas, face the problem, and deal with one thing at a time. Don't try to do multiple things and get yourself all wrapped up.
Mhm.
I had an interesting conversation I remember with my first therapist, and I told her, I said, I'm really struggling with the sexual addiction. It's really bothering me. I can't get a handle on it. And she stopped me and she said, you need to give yourself a break. He said, you need to stop this. He said, we need to deal with the trauma now. That's the number one thing we need to deal with. Don't worry about this stuff. And she gave me permission not to worry about it. It changed. I mean, I'm not saying it went away, but it lessened it so much more. And because I was just saying, I was trying to fix everything again. I was trying to fix it, and I didn't have the energy to do it. So I was wearing out. And that's what the enemy likes to do, is engage you in all this stuff, tell you you need to fix this, you need to fix this, and this, man, you're hopeless. And that's what kills us. That's what keeps us from moving forward. So just, that advice was really, really key at that point in time in my walk, trying to get well.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've got a second cousin, I believe, whose husband, she had went through some major addiction. And one of her things she said was, as long as he's trying, I'm trying. So, and that was one of the things I would say to people too, is as long as, because Randy never gave up. I mean, I don't know how he went to those sessions. I would sit there and just think, oh my goodness, how? He knows he's going to sit there and cry and see horrible things, but he makes himself go every week. And that's what she said. She said, as long as he's trying, I'll stay and I'll try. And that made, and I agree with that. As long as he was working at it, I was going to be there for him. And it was, it wasn't easy. We'd stand in that kitchen and he would cry. My shoulders would be soaking wet from the tears. And it would be night after night after night, wake up in the middle of the night screaming. I'd have to jump on top of him practically to get him to stop screaming so he didn't wake up the kids, give them nightmares. But it was just, it was a lot of tough years, but he did it. We did it.
Oh, yes, you did. And I have one more question too. I know at one point you were both scared getting through all of this and getting healed, if you would still love each other. How's your marriage today?
Oh,
awesome.
We're having our best life.
We are.
It's it's changed our marriage so much, and just I mean, it's really interesting to see how much in unity we've come together. We rededicated our marriage to God, and it's the three of us, but how that has worked so well for us, and it has changed us.
It's awesome. It was well worth the fight.
Awesome.
Yeah, I don't think there's any one answer to how we did it, other than that we asked God to come into our marriage, and He did it. There's no explaining it. It's literally that simple. And He's healed our hearts in a lot of places, and in things with each other, and it's grown us more closer together in the process than we've ever thought possible. And I can't imagine not being without Jesus, and I can't imagine not being without Cynthia. So.
Yeah. Well, awesome. I'm so excited to be here with you today. And I wanted to just one more time for your book, because I know people may want to look at this and check it out. Our Born Identity, Randy and Cynthia, Lail. And that is available on Amazon. And could there be a ministry in progress?
There could.
Yeah, I think so. This is part of it.
Yeah.
We're just getting out. We're just beginning to make the steps and talking about our story, and real excited about it. Just especially where God's going to take this. I think, I'm certain there's going to be a ministry. So stay tuned.
Okay, I can't wait. All right. Thank you so much. I always pray a little blessing over my listeners.
Sure, I'll do it.
Okay.
Heavenly Father, we just praise you and thank you for your love and for us. And we just thank you, Father, for just giving us the story and allowing us the opportunity to be able to share. And we just thank you for Julie and her ministry and in this podcast. And we just ask, Lord, that you just bless it, and bless it as it goes out
in the airways. We ask, Lord, you bless the listeners. We ask you to give them peace and hope and through our story, and that you will speak to them and just open their hearts in a mighty way, and just bring healing and restoration into their lives. We just thank you and we praise you again, Lord, with all our hearts, and we just lift it up to you in your Son's name, Jesus Christ. We pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much for your time today. I'm really grateful. And like I said, I'm excited to hear how God's going to use this and how he's going to continue to work through you. So thank you both for your time. And everyone, thank you for listening. If you have a miracle that you want to reach out and share with me, please email me at everydaymiraclespodcast@gmail.com, and I will get back to you. Thanks, Randy and Cynthia, for waiting so long. So God is very active. So thank you so much. God bless.